I'm Andrea Deal, part of Protiviti's CIO buyer team, and I'm here with Dan Stummer. You want to introduce yourself?
For sure. Thanks, Andrea. My name is Dan Stummer. I'm Managing Director, also part of the CIO buyer team.
Dan, can you talk us through what exactly is the modern CIO dilemma?
Yeah, it's a great question, because one of the things that we've talked a lot about is like, how did we get to this moment, and what are the challenges that people face? So I think the easiest thing to think about in the context of the CIO dilemma is this idea of transformation, modernization, and things along those lines. But at the heart of the way that we think about that is really around a red pill, blue pill type of moment.
Talk me through what that actually means.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that the idea is that if you take the blue pill, you're stuck on the same exact journey that you've always been stuck on, which is that idea of we're going to go through a modernization effort, we're going to do large scale roadmaps, we're going to go through and really transform the organization. The red pill on the opposite side of that is the realization that 75% of the blue pills never actually come to fruition. So one of the things that we talk about is how can you be much more successful within that context? And I think the first thing that we recognize is that it's just actually hard for the CIOs. And why is it hard? It's hard because we can't have that honest conversation. We can't actually talk about the complexities of technology, but when you really think about it, it's not necessarily a technology problem. It's actually a culture problem. It's a human problem. And really at the core element of what we end up getting into this is the realization that those that are successful have high trust environments.
You talk about exponential technology. Can you help me understand what does that mean?
Yeah, I think that those are the words that get thrown around an awful lot today, right? So, 10 years ago, 15 years ago it was cloud, and then you get into this conversation about now it's AI, in a couple of years it'll be quantum, or even a couple of months the way things move. So that idea of how things move on a very different curve. So when you think about platforms and you think about network effects and exponentials is another word that we love to be able to use, but I think we use them without really fully understanding exactly what they mean in that context. So I think if you fundamentally think about a change curve, most people are really quite comfortable with this idea of linear progression. I'm able to see it, I can know exactly how far away we are, and it's quite easy. When you start thinking about technology, what you really recognize is that it's not actually on a linear change curve. It's actually on an exponential curve. So it gets into that idea of like, how do you handle the concept that technology changes so rapidly and the expectations kind of collide with those rapid changes, and you get into a situation where you just can't catch that curve any further.
But I feel like I can conceptualize that. I can see a linear growth curve. I can understand an exponential growth curve. Why are you arguing there's a disconnect?
I think that you think you can.
Sure.
And I think that that's pretty normal for what people believe. But when we go through it, and we like to take people through a pretty simple explanation, and we'll say, okay, listen, let's just test whether you really fully understand an exponential curve. And the first thing we'll do is we'll say, let's just start off with something simple. Let's take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 30. So if I were to ask you to do that, take 30 linear steps, where would you be?
I'm probably across the room.
For sure, right? It's easy to conceptualize. Our brains have gone through that entire piece.
Yeah.
But when I ask you to think about something very different, which is that idea of having 30 exponential steps. So in this particular case, I'm going to ask you to take 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and on your 30th exponential step, where do you think you're going to be?
Well, we're in Vegas now. I'm from Chicago. Maybe I'm closer. Maybe I'm in Chicago.
It's a good guess.
Okay.
But it's wrong.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
So nice try. But it's not atypical, because partly what ends up happening is that actually is probably a pretty good guess. But the answer to that 30 exponential steps is actually 26 times around the Earth, right? So the very
actually
nature,
not close?
Actually not close, just so we're clear. Not close.
Got it.
But I think one of the things that often happens is people will say things like exponential curves, and they'll talk about the idea of understanding adoption rates and platforms and network effects. And what you end up finding is they really just cannot conceptualize that, because we weren't really wired at an evolutionary level to understand just exactly what that curve looks like. But if you're a CIO that's sitting in an organization in which you have all of this amazing technology that's coming forward, you get lost in that dialogue of being honest about where we actually are. And so somebody be like, well, how are we going to take advantage of that? And if you're not careful, you get caught in this idea of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 looks eerily similar to 1, 2, 4, 8, and then all of a sudden it's not. and you get lost and you recognize that you're no longer on the right curve.
Okay, so I understand exponential technologies, truly that we can't conceptualize this as humans. What can CIOs do then today, tomorrow, to make any sort of action?
Yeah, I think that's the right question. And I think that you have to build a little bit of pragmatism into that conversation, because otherwise it gets a bit too esoteric. And I think the first thing that I would say is you have to admit that it's hard. And you have to be honest within your organization, and you have to create a safe space in which you can all have that conversation, and just fully acknowledging that, one, this is really, really hard, and we probably don't really understand it. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing that we can do is then recognize that we have to create an environment of trust. And in that moment, and thinking about what are those enablers for a culture of trust, because to be very candid with you, trust is the currency for growth. And you really have to get into that moment of understanding, how do we foster, how do we create safe spaces so that we can have honest dialogues around those. And then I think once you've done, one, we know it's hard, two, we know that we've got to create a space in which we can try and experiment and do all of those elements in a safe space. I think the third thing that becomes really about that pragmatic way of going is just really fully understanding that you probably don't need another large transformation or full-on modernization effort. What you should really think about is, how do I start small? And I like to think about the idea that the concept is like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
All right, I'm following. I understand as humans, we struggle to conceptualize linear growth versus exponential growth. What does that mean for a CIO today? What can they actually do to make progress?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because otherwise you get into this very esoteric moment, and that's really not the purpose of it, right? So I think the first thing that you have to do is, one, just get together and acknowledge that it's just fundamentally hard, right? So the technology is difficult to conceptualize, but the environment's tough, right? So it's just a really, really challenging moment. So I think the first thing is, give yourself a little bit of grace, give your team a little bit of grace, give your partners a little bit of grace, and just acknowledge that it's hard. The second thing that I think you should go through is really just kind of understanding that once you know it's hard, you have to create and foster an environment that allows for trust. So you're going to want to figure out a way in which you are okay with failure, you're okay with experimentation, you're okay with innovation and things along those lines. Because the truth of the matter is, the where we live today is trust is the new currency for growth. Which then brings you to the third thing, which is like, okay, that's great. So how do I operationalize that? And I will tell you that you probably don't need a new large-scale transformation. You probably don't need a new roadmap. You don't need things along those lines.
Are you sure you're a consultant?
I'm aware, right? But I think really what you probably need to do is to think about how you internalize innovation within your organization, and how you go about thinking about, well, what does my partners look like? How do we go about and think about bringing more people into this fold? And honestly, it gets about that concept of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So you want to think about these ideas of compounding wins. And so it's something that's going to be somewhat small, be very, very tactical in that we have this particular use case, we're going to be able to put this value that's out, and you're going to be able to stack that win, and you stack enough of them, and you've built enough trust and credibility within that. And I think that really gets to that idea that small is really, really large when you think about it from a compounding perspective. That's what I would recommend on Monday morning.
I see that. It's having these small projects is actually building a bigger amount of trust that enables you to actually have the transformation that you're always aiming to have. Dan, we know that one of the largest challenges for CIOs in financial services is that roughly 70% of their budgets is captured in run activities. How do you suggest that they take a look at that problem and help solve for it?
Yeah, I think this is a really good point, because one of the things that often gets overlooked is just that change versus run imbalance. And so, you think about your large financial institutions, and they too have this similar challenge, but they just have so many more dollars that they can throw at it. So for kind of the more middle-sized organizations, that it becomes much more acute. And I think one of the things that we look at is the importance of understanding your alliance and ecosystem partners. Because what you have to recognize is that there's no way that you're going to be able to compete and the same amount of innovation spend, nor would you actually need to. If you're able to look at a partner, whether it's Salesforce for kind of the front end and that the change that you're looking to be able to make in that particular area of your business, or if it's more of a back end that you're thinking about with the ServiceNow platform, really leaning in and deciding like this is going to be our partner of choice, our platform of choice. We're going to take it as is into our environment. And what you're really getting is all of the dollars, the research dollars that they've spent. And you really recognize that they are on that competitive space, so what you're getting is all the benefits from it. But one of the things we would advocate for is really thinking about who those partners are. There doesn't need to be a ton of them. Choose one or two that you're really, really going to embed within your organization, and then move forward. But really go all in with those partners. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do here at Protiviti, is that idea of really recognizing the importance of going to market with a partner of choice. And whether that's for us, whether it's Salesforce or whether that's going to be ServiceNow, particularly within financial services, those are the two that we see most often is where people want to be able to spend a good deal of time. And we recognize that the importance is actually putting something in that ecosystem, building an asset on their platform that is unique and bespoke, and we're committed to doing that as well. So just like we're advocating for our clients, we do the same thing. We think it's important that we are a part of that ecosystem and we're building assets on those platforms as well.
That's great to understand. It's helping solve a dilemma that's not going away, but it's rather finding a partner to help you offset those costs and who's focused on innovation in ways that maybe you don't have the dollars to be as committed to the journey.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think one of the things that we look at when we look at our ecosystem strategy and our partnership strategy is there are some that do this really, really well. And it gets back to one of our earlier conversations, which is what does it mean to be a platform? And when you look at Salesforce as a platform, or you look at ServiceNow as a platform and Workday and things along those lines, you really recognize that it creates this network effect, because all of these other players and these small fintech will actually snap in. So the benefit of being really embedded with one of those primary partners that we talk about is that you naturally will get all of the integration capabilities of all of the other fintechs you're looking to be able to partner with as well.
Dan, it feels like everyone's an AI company now.
Yeah.
How do you talk through, how does technology have a play in this? How do companies differentiate in this environment?
I think that's probably a really good question and segue, especially for those firms, those banks that don't have billions and billions of dollars to be able to spend on this. So we can give the cliche answer of like, well, data is really important. And by the way, it's super important. But I think one of the things that we need to be mindful about is that for smaller and mid-size firms, and banks in particular, one of the most important strategies that they can commit to is kind of understanding what their key partnerships are going to look like. So you really want to be able to take advantage of that idea of these large ecosystem partners. These platforms are spending billions and billions of dollars on AI. So you are going to be able to benefit from all of those innovation dollars, all of that research, the way in which they've been able to integrate into core platforms by just making strategic choices with key ecosystem partners. And then the benefit thereof, if you're one of those firms that doesn't have hundreds of billions of dollars to be able to spend, or isn't actually just an AI firm to begin with, is that you get all of the other firms that are snapping into those platforms. So if you think about Salesforce, if you think about Workday and Oracle and all of those other elements that are in there, one of the key things that they bring to our clients is the idea that they've already built an ecosystem. So the integration, while not seamless, is so much easier for people, and you then get these knock-on effects and all of these other benefits as a result of choosing very wisely your strategic partners.
It's helpful. So how does Protiviti think about our ecosystem partnership and how we service our clients together?
It's a great question, because you can get lost in 1,000 different providers. And depending on what you're actually looking for, there's a lot of niche players that may be very, very relevant. But the way that we think about our ecosystem strategy is there's a core 6 that we think about, right? And within those core, the primary thing for us is just understanding the context in which they play in a particular industry. And so I think that where we see it from a financial services is whether that's a ServiceNow and we think about the back office focus and being able to think about operationalizing that and resiliency plays that exist within it, Or if we flip that and we think that something like Salesforce, and then you get into this conversation about front end and growth and CRMs. But the irony is those two firms, and we use those as specific examples here, are actually competing for the same space. And so there's a lot of great integrations that they provide and synergies thereof.
That's helpful. Yeah, I can understand how organizations can leverage ecosystem partners to truly enable their future growth when budgets are constrained and priorities are constantly shifting.
Yeah, especially, I think the latest statistics show anywhere between 70 and 80% of most firms' IT budgets are stuck in what we refer to as run, right? So run mode, keep the lights on and things along those lines. So then the question is, how are you going to get strategic growth if you've only got 20 cents, 30 cents on the dollar to be able to run your change agenda? Well, the real answer is that you've got to get leverage from somebody else. You actually have to borrow. And the benefit of choosing your partners wisely and strategically and really, really committing to a few of those partners is that you get all of the knock-on effects from all of the research and all of the billions of dollars that they go through from a research and prioritization perspective. You just have to be able to commit. You have to be able to stay up with that. And then you recognize the benefits of all of the ecosystems that they bring.
That's helpful. Yeah. Thank you for talking us through that. Thank you for helping us understand how we can make this actionable today. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.